Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about my 2023 favorite makeup items. So I have to say, this was really hard to do. It's always hard every year. I was going to do a top 3 for each category, which I think I've done in the past. But honestly, some categories had more and some had less. And I decided to just go with what my absolute favorite products were for each category. So some we've got quite a few more than 3. I definitely didn't put too many in any category, but others, there might only be like 1 or 2 things. So let's go ahead and get started. And I just want to say that these are my absolute favorite items from this year that were new this year. So new to me, at least this year. So there are still some of my like long-term favorites, like the Gucci bronzer and 01 and so forth, which I did not include on this list. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go category by category. So please be sure to utilize those timestamps or chapters if that helps you. We're going to start off with primers, and this is a Sisley Blur Expert. This powder is not new itself. However, shade 0 is new. The previous shade was too deep for me, so I could never really use it. Technically, it's a powder, but it's really more of a powder primer. So I think you can even see just here on my hand how much of a blurring effect this gives your skin. And you want to put this on underneath your foundation, whether it's a powder foundation or a liquid foundation. You want to put this on underneath. You can use this in place of a primer, which is why I consider a powder primer, or you could use, sometimes I'll put my primer on a liquid primer and then put this on top of that and then my foundation. But I have found that this really just adds another level of blur to it. And yet, even though it's a powder, it does not give you any sort of dry, powdery look to the skin. Now, in my opinion, you want to use some sort of dense brush to put this on. Something like the Sonia G. This is the Face 1, which is now the Buffer Pro, or a small kabuki brush. Just something with some density because it is a firmly pressed powder. So this is going under primers for me. This is actually the only new primer this year that made the list. My other favorite primers are repeat items. We have the Surratt Perfection Use Primer. I've gone through many tubes of this. And then, although I have to say 1 tube lasts about a year. So you can see this one is almost done. I already have another one that I accidentally started as well. The Euphoria Primer. This is my favorite hydrating primer. This is very much like the old Dior Prestige primer that they no longer make. And that was a favorite of mine before that. This has replaced that for me. So, definitely a great one. And then the other primer I want to mention is the Cle de Peau Brightening Enhancer Veil. This is fantastic. So those all made the cut. Now I have to say the new Chanel Les Beige primers, I have been using those a lot. I have been using the Frosty White more under the eyes and the Icy Beige on the rest of my skin. So these are really great. I do really, really like those, but I wouldn't put them in the category of favorites at this point. So they're kind of like a runners up. They're really good. So if you do get a chance to pick up one of those, I'd recommend them. And so my favorite new primer of the year would be the Sisley Blur Expert in 0. Moving on to foundations, we have the Cle de Peau Cushion, and I've actually used this up. So right now, I haven't purchased a refill yet, but they do sell refills. So instead though, what I've been doing is I've been adding my favorite foundation mix to that. I've just kind of been mixing my liquids in and setting it in the sponge until I go ahead and buy a replacement. This is not a new favorite combination for me. It's the Cle de Peau Radiant Matte and Radiant Natural. I wear shade I-10 in both, and I do a 50-50 mix, and I've been adding it to the compact. But the compact on its own, that cushion foundation I think is fantastic. The other cushion foundation, which I really love, is the Sisley. However, I have a better shade match from Cle de Peau. So the finish though on this is just incredible. So this is actually a refill. So this foundation I think made my favorites list last year, but I did buy a refill this year, so I included that one. two other foundations to make the list this year. We have the new Suku Cream Foundation. So this is a new version, and I love this one because I think it's really suitable for more skin types than the previous version was. It's a little bit less rich, and we have a better shade selection. So I wear shade 205, which is a new shade there. The other foundation I want to include is the Ritual de Fille. This is a serum foundation, and with just like a couple drops, you're gonna get like full coverage. So it's kind of like, it's like the idea behind the Janessa Myrick's Yummy Skin Foundation, which I also really like, but I find the RDF is easier to use and a little bit less oily. So, I mean, you do want to shake both of them before use, but the Ritual de Fille, you know, this is a really great foundation. So I think it is awesome. Moving on to powders, there are really only two I'd like to highlight this year. That would be the new Asuku Loose Powder. I think this is a great loose powder. It does kind of look lavender in photos and so forth. It's not. You can see you get a nice big puff. You can see through the container, it kind of has a little bit of a lavender hue, but it's actually a soft pinky white shade. And you really don't need much. So you can apply this with a puff and it does a great job. You know, if you are going to use the puff, you want to make sure that you do kind of, you know, you can put this on, but you want to like tap off any excess. So, you know, you don't want too much. So just kind of give it a tap and you put that on, but less is more with this. I usually use a brush. I like either something really light and fluffy. Like today I use this and I use this Tancedo brush. And or something, this is the densest I would go. This is the Master Face from Sonia G. It's one of my go-to powder brushes, and it has been for many years. It's still a go-to. But this is a powder I've been reaching for constantly. I absolutely love it. I think it just gives you, you know, it mattifies softly. You get just a subtle matte finish with it. Yet there's no powderiness to it. You can't tell that you've added powder. So that I think is the best loose powder that's come out this year. But the other powder I wanted to highlight is also very recent. That's the Chantecaille Radiant Glow Blur Powder. So this is the one from the holiday collection. And yes, they have the blur powder in their permanent line now, but this is the Radiant Glow, which means there is going to be a little bit of a shimmery sheen. I don't see any actual glitter particles though, but it will give you a little bit of a sheen. And this light pink shade here works beautifully for me. And I feel like this formula is creamier than some of their previous iterations. So it's still going to be a pretty firmly pressed powder. So buffing this into the skin, I think does the best job. I like this as a finishing powder. So I'll use the Suku as a setting powder, but this I often use as a finishing powder. Sometimes I'll use it as setting, but for the most part, I think buffing this in to the face is a really great one. So either something like the Sonia G Face Pro, or sorry, the Buffer Pro or the Sonia G Master Face, you know, something like these styles works really well with this powder in my opinion. Moving on to concealers, my favorites haven't changed too much since my mid-year favorites. Number one, it's the Valentino concealer. So I actually just purchased a new tube of this because I use this one. This is pretty much my go-to. It is going to be kind of a brightening concealer, so it's not going to give you full coverage. It's a light to medium coverage, and it gives you a little bit of illumination without any sparkle. A lot of these illuminating concealers recently have shimmer in them. Who wants shimmer right under their eyes? I mean, if you do, you use targeted application with, you know, an eyeshadow. You're not going to put it all over with a concealer, in my opinion. So this, I wear shade LIGR2. That is a favorite. Another favorite, the Chanel Sublimage concealer. This is moussey texture, feels like skincare, but you can really get full coverage with this. And I wear shade 02. This, I think, is a fantastic concealer. And I believe this was also in my mid-year favorites. So let me go ahead and put this one right next to it. But it's so easy to work with. I absolutely love it. Plus it came with a really useful brush as well, which honestly, I don't use it so much for concealer, but I do use it for other purposes like cream blush and so forth. And then my third concealer to make the list is the new Ciroc. So the Ciroc concealer is going to be one of those sponge tip applications, which is not my favorite, but I love this concealer. This is shade 3. I have shade 3 and 1, and I kind of usually mix them. But 3, if I had to pick one, I would go with shade 3 for me. You can see it's pretty neutral. This is going to be a I guess medium coverage. It's light to medium, but it's more medium than light. And I think it's just kind of like your great everyday concealer. So those would be my top 3 concealers. Next, let's take a look at blushes. I did want to highlight one cream blush, and that is the Violette FR Bisou blush. And I can't remember if these came out completely in 2023 or if I purchased my first one in 2022, but I did purchase the rest of the shades at least this year. So on one end you have a brush and it is removable, so you can take that off for cleaning, which is always handy. You can see I actually don't use the brush too often. And then we have kind of this marbled blush, and there are 3 shades, and this one here is Inez. And she named them after her friends, which I thought was really nice. But it's just a really great cream blush. It lasts all day. It feels a little moisturizing on the skin, and yet not being greasy, no tackiness. So I think it's just a really great cream blush. So I wanted to include this one. And then other blushes that I just keep coming back to would be the Bobbi Brown Brightening Blushes. So this is Blushed Peach. This one, I mean, you've got a bronzer, a highlighter, and a blush. I usually just mix them all together, but just the peach shade here. And I have all of the shades, but this is probably the one I use the most, or the Blushed Bronze. So this one here is Blush Bronze. Let me just go ahead and show that one to you as well. We'll put it right underneath the peach. But you can see it's not really bronze. It's like more like a soft red with a touch of brown in it. But I think that's a really beautiful blush. Those, I really like those. They're just light, easy to use, great go-to shades. I also wanted to mention Addiction Tokyo. So I'm so glad Addiction Tokyo has made it to the US. I've tried a few of their new products. I will have another Addiction Tokyo video coming relatively soon. But this is one of the best blushes. Their blush formulas are very much like the Suku melting powder blushes, which have been discontinued. So I think these are a great alternative. They're not the same, but they are similar. This one here is called Skyflower 007P. Is the number. And I mean, just look at that. They have different finishes for the blushes, but this pearl finish, the P stands for pearl, is my favorite so far. I have not tried the matte, but yeah, this one, I absolutely love it. So yeah, I think this definitely made to the favorites. Another blush, this is the Suku Melting Powder Blush in 105. And this was right when they discontinued it, but we have this gorgeous lavender pink shade. Oh, so pretty. That's been a go-to. I absolutely love that one. And then I also wanted to include the Chanel Fantasy de Chanel blush because, well, honestly, this was the best thing Chanel did this year, in my opinion. But you can see it's another like highlighting blush. This one is shimmery though. You definitely have quite a bit of shimmer in this. So I have this on my cheeks right now, but no additional highlighter is needed with that. But I think it's just a really nice shade. So these are my favorite blushes for this year. Definitely some honorable mentions like the Intense Plum from Gucci, but these are the ones that made the list as actual true favorites that I keep going back to month after month. Now, while we're talking about cheeks, let's take a look at bronzers. Now, my favorite bronzer is still the Gucci 01, but we had a couple of great newcomers. So Ciroc came out with some new bronzers. And hopefully they will expand the shade range, but they have 2 shades right now. And actually this one here is my favorite, which I think is the deeper one. It's a little bit cooler and that's why I like it, but this is Soleil Claire. So I have this one on today. And I love this formula. Again, it's going to be similar in formulation to the Addiction Tokyo or the Suku Melting Powder Blush, but in bronzer formula. So it's like that slurry powder. The melting powder blushes, things like this, They're essentially encapsulated oils in there that burst when you are buffing them into the skin, so that they give you like kind of a melted and natural finish. And that's what I really love about them. So I think this is a really great bronzer. I used this one actually quite a bit. This and the Gucci 01 are my two most used. But I did want to mention the Hermes bronzer, which I have to say, I absolutely love this formula, and that's why I put it on the list. The color selection, though, is a little wonky, so I don't use it as much as I would if they had a color more like this Syrah shade. So you can see this is number 1, Totori. It's a little bit orangey yellow, so I don't use it too frequently, but the formula is so great that I wanted to include it here. Now for highlighters, we had quite a few to include. So this was one of my larger categories. We have the Hermes Rose Atacama. This is a go-to highlighter for me. I typically mix all the shades in. You can see it is a really beautiful shade. You've got this nice, kind of more of a soft finish to it. It's not going to be a super blingy highlight. And then I wanted to mention the new Tom Ford Soleil Neige highlighters. So I use both shades a lot. This is number 2, Grand Paradis, which is more of a champagne. You can see it's a bit more strongly metallic versus the Hermes. And then we have the Rose Irisé, and put that one right underneath. But absolutely loving these. And I have to say, Tom Ford has kind of won this category for me, because I also wanted to include their permanent, this is Peach Light. This is in the permanent line. So we've got 2 shades in the palette. If you mix them together, this is what it looks like. I typically just use the lightest shade, but I absolutely love it. You can see that the formula is similar to those in the Soleil Neige. So I had to include that one as well. Then I have a couple of other highlighters to include as well. I had to include some liquid and cream highlighters. So we've got the Givenchy Prisme Libre. This is shade Rose. And this came out with their holiday collection. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. And the formula on this, I think, is fantastic. We also have the YSL New, and this is the shade Rosy Quartz. You can see it's got a little bit of a champagne-y mauve kind of color to it. This one I wore a ton. This was basically my go-to highlighter during the summer. And I think it's fantastic. And then the KJH brand, Katie Jane Hughes, Light Pink. So you can use it it comes with a serum, a shine serum, or you can use it just the pigment, but this is awesome. So these were my favorite highlighters for 2023. All right, moving on to eyeshadows. We've got a few here. So I did want to bring in the Dior Backstage palettes in Silver Essentials. It's so hard to find a cool tone palette that is not just grays. And I still haven't tried my Natasha Denona Xenon, so I'll get to that sometime. I just haven't gotten to that yet. But this palette, you've got purples, you've got blues, grays, got some rosy tones, and I think it is an awesome cool tone eyeshadow palette. Your formulas are your basic Dior Backstage formulas. They perform well, and I thought this was fantastic. So I reach for this a lot on days when I'm not filming, so I definitely wanted to include that here. I also wanted to include the new Cle de Peau eyeshadows. So I love these. They are definitely pricey. I'm still not sure about this cream primer shade, but I have to say none of mine I haven't had any issue yet. They're not super old yet. So we'll see how that performs over time, because you have kind of that creamy shade there. And then we've got these beautiful finishes here. So this one though, they are refillable, but they are not magnetic. So just something to know. This is number 1, Sand Dune, and you just clip that in there into the palette. I also wanted to include a few Suku palettes, and honestly, this summer collection from Suku, this is palette 125 with the green and 126 with the purples. I love these. You've got kind of some duochrome shades here. I'm going to swatch the duochromes from these 2 palettes here, but I usually use these palettes together, and I absolutely love these. These are go-to palettes. I actually keep them right here on my desk, right here next to the camera, because I use these so often. And then another one that's really been one that I've been reaching for a lot is 131 from the new holiday kits. And well, I love all of these colors. So we got a pink, we've got this beautiful blue, we have this taupe, which I wish they would make in a single. And then we have kind of this silvery grayish white shade there. Really beautiful quad. You know, I just keep reaching for this one. Few other favorites, Addiction Tokyo. And so they have their singles here in the US. I haven't seen any of their like quads that I have seen, you know, on Japanese sites. So I do have one of their quads. It's fantastic, but I purchased that from Fude Japan. This here is my favorite single that I have so far. This is Flashback. It's 010P. This is the pearl finish. And you can see it's pretty close to this Suku shade. It's actually a little bit more mauve tones in there, but their eyeshadows are top notch. And then we have the Violette Vespertine palette from Viseart. This is pretty new, but I keep wearing this one as well. These are going to be kind of like your rosier, more purple tones, but there are neutrals in here as well. And it's just such a great everyday palette. It's meant to be a companion to the original Violette palette. And then they made the Cashmere Charmeuse as a companion to the Cashmere palette, which is a favorite of mine. But actually this one and the regular Cashmere, I think they go very nicely together. So those are my companion palettes. And then I also wanted to mention the Esom palettes. I think they are great. They've got mattes, they've got shimmers. This one here's the number 4 Elevate palette, which happens to be my favorite. I love the colors in here. These ones are all shimmers. And you go from light to dark or deep, and you know, you've got rainbow of colors. So I really love that. The formulas are great. And then this one here is a palette that, I don't know, I've worn this on my channel, but I don't think I ever truly featured it. I know I've swatched it. This is the LH Cosmetics Aim Higher palette. And this is another one that goes right here on my vanity. And I use this middle shade here, which is called Smear, quite a bit. Even just as a one and done, but you can see her formulas are super creamy. They are shimmery. You've got great mattes. I think her palettes are underrated. Such a beautiful palette. So this is one of my favorites for the year. And last but definitely not least, we have the Prada eyeshadow. And for me, Prada was the best new beauty brand this year. So I know Hermes came out with new eyeshadows this year. We had Rabanne is a new brand this year. Prada is, to me, the one that nailed it out of the park. So this is what I have on my eyes right now. You know, you've got a whole bunch of different finishes and formulas in here. And I just think the palettes were really well designed. The finishes and formulas are, you know, top notch. You've got the refillable, which is great. Now, they didn't truly do a full launch yet. They launched at Selfridges, and then they're supposed to launch everything else, you know, at other retailers in early 2024. So they are available like on the Prada Beauty US website. They didn't have all of the items available there originally, but they have pretty much everything available there. And then they'll be launching at regular department stores and so forth in 2024. And from what they've told me, because I emailed to inquire about this, they will be doing kind of a rolling release. So there may be some department stores that get them first, but they are rolling them out to a variety of different department stores in 2024. Now for eyeliners, I wanted to mention a couple new ones. You know, the Sisley Fido Kohl Star is one of my all-time favorite eyeliner formulas in general. I picked up some new shades of that this year. So I think that's a great one. Also, the Victoria Beckham in Smoky Quartz. This is one of my go-tos. I actually just keep it right here. And you'll see in a second, I definitely have a type. So this is a gorgeous shade here. Now, it can be a little bit light for some, you know, eyeshadow looks. So just something to know. And then the Byredo Perplexed, which you can see is a similar shade here. So these would be my top eyeliners for this year. For lip liners or lip pencils, we really just have just one that I wanted to mention. And those are the Jones Road lip pencils. So they actually gifted me like half of them originally. And then I liked them so much, I went and bought the rest of the shades. This is the one that I use the most. And this is shade Mauve. So this is going to be more of your traditional lip pencil. It's creamy, yet still stiff enough, dry enough that it's not going to be spreading. It performs well. So this has been my go-to recently. I still have, I still reach for my favorites like the Givenchy and so forth, the Sicily. Those are all great formulas as well. But for newcomers, it's definitely this Jones Road one. For brow pencils, Victoria Beckham, the Baby Blade. This is definitely the best. I've already used this one up. Let me see if I can get a little color. This is the shade Taupe. I've already, ordered a replacement, but this is fantastic. And then also the Suku pen. This is the liquid pen. I have shade 2. And I put that right there next to it. So you can see that right there by the knuckle. But these are my favorite brow products. And then, of course, not new this year, the Tom Ford Fiber Brow Gels in that category as well. As for lip balms, we will talk about those with skincare. I'll do that in a separate video, but definitely some great lip balms. Now, as for mascaras, I wanted to highlight a few colored mascaras first. So Addiction Tokyo, they had color mascaras for their a holiday collection. This is the purple one. It is incredible. I love the formula. The brush is nice. And then we have the Hermes. Now I have to say, I like the Hermes and the Addiction. I think both formulas are equivalent. I do prefer the Addiction brush. It's a little smaller, more target. You can see that the purples are very similar. So the Hermes mascara was my favorite part of the Hermes, eye launch. And then the Byredo mascara in Eroda Echo is another favorite. You can see this is gorgeous teal shade. I have this one on right now. And I wanted to mention the YSL Lash Clash in blue. Now they also have brown and black. This mascara in general is a favorite formula. I love the YSL Lash Clash in both brown and black. So I think those are great. I also wanted to bring in the Westman Atelier mascara. This is the new one. This is the I Want You mascara. The I Love You is the old one. The I Want You is the new one, and this is awesome. I have the brown one. I will be getting refill for this. So it is refillable packaging. It's one of my new favorite mascaras. Absolutely love that. Other favorite mascaras of mine that are not new would be the Surratt Noir Lash Tint, which I'm still asking them to make it in brown. And then the Sicily So Stretch, which I purchased when it's on sale. So it's definitely pricey. But those would be my favorite mascaras overall. We are going to move on to lips. Now on my lips right now, we have the Jimmy Choo lip glosses. These are the best lip glosses, like literally the best lip glosses. So this one here is shade 5, Rose Blush. And again, this is the one I have on my lips. The reason these are so great, they're comfortable, they're smooth, they're not tacky, they do add a little hydration, and they have the longest wear time I've ever experienced in a gloss. So these are awesome. I got this one and then I bought a whole bunch more. So we'll have another video with more shades relatively soon, but the best lip gloss, hands down. Another lip gloss I really like is the new Suku Treatment Wrapping Lips. I thought this was a really nice formula. This one to me is, it's not as long wearing as the Jimmy Choo. This is more of like a lip balm lip gloss, and I find it very comfortable. It does add a little bit more hydration. It's lighter weight than the Jimmy Choo. And then for lipsticks, my favorite lipstick that came out this year is the Dior Rouge Forever in 670 Rose Blues. This is a shade that I wear a ton. If you watch me regularly, you have probably seen me talk about this a few times. But this is a really beautiful shade. And if you don't like the matte look, it's really easy to just add a gloss on top of it. But I think this is a really great lipstick. And a few companies have come out with, very similar looking shades. But this one, I still think there's just something about this shade that just makes it a little bit more perfect, but you know, Suku has a similar shade, and I forget what other brands off the top of my head, but there were definitely some. I did have some comparisons in a video, so check that out if you're interested. And one more lip product is the Isom lip palette. I typically don't love lip palettes because I don't use all the shades. This one's so great to mix and match. I think the formula is fantastic. It performs really well. It's not too... Sometimes lip palettes, they're either very, very creamy and messy, or they can be, you know, kind of barely there. I think this strikes a great balance. And we've got cool warm tones, namely some of these like lavender lilac shades, which it's really hard to find in a lipstick, let alone a palette. And then while we're talking about that shade, I did want to also bring up, this is shade 104R. I think it's like Rosa Creza from Valentino, which is not a new shade, but it's a new to me shade. I think this is also a great lipstick. I almost forgot to include one of my all-time favorites this year. This is one I use so often that it is in my handbag, and that is the Hermes Prune Noir lipstick. This is such a gorgeous shade. You can have it sheer or more dramatic. I absolutely love it. I'd snap it up while you can if you haven't already, because it is limited edition. So those are my favorite lip products for this year. You know, I love lipsticks. It's typically the hardest category for me to narrow down, but actually this year it was pretty easy. Those were definitely the standouts for me, and you know, I hope that was helpful. And last, I want to go through a few favorite brushes. Now, I think Rephr did a really great job this year coming out with those mini and max sets. I do hope we see those back permanently on an individual basis. Those are a runner-up, though. I didn't include those. My favorite, actually, is the 3D brush. This is Sabicaho, which is incredible. They offered it for $88. I purchased this. This one, they did send me a tester brush back during the summer. That's when I fell in love with it. I had to try really hard not to show it on my channel. It was so hard. I would have to purposely set it aside every time. But this one here, you can see the holiday brush had pink flowers. This one here is what they call version B. And it does have a slanted shape. I did use this one today, so I do think you can kind of see the shape better though with a little powder on there. But this definitely favorite brush of the year. Another go-to brush, this is Sonia G's Fundamental Worker L. I use this for under eye powder like every day. It's also great for like highlighter and so forth, but the under eye powder, it's like perfect. So that made it to the list. Now, I totally splurged and purchased these Kyoto Sakura brushes. This one here is Gray Squirrel. This one here is Sabicaho. And yeah, they made the list. They're just so decadent. This is not something I would purchase on a regular basis. They are collector's brushes, but they are so incredibly special to me. So absolutely love these. And I want to give a huge shout out to Fude Bobo, which is a new Fude store that hasn't been open super long. And they are becoming my like go-to for Fude. So absolutely love that store. I'm not affiliated, but I do want to mention it because I just think that she really makes the ordering process very easy. If you have questions, she's very responsive and she's got competitive pricing. So, you know, I just think there's a lot of transparency with her shop. So I definitely want to give her a huge shout out. And Miss Siobhan, she's the one who recommended the shop to me in the first place. Thank you so much. And then I also wanted to mention this Hermes brow brush. You know, it's kind of weird, a brow brush. You know, you feel like they're kind of like all the same, but I don't know. There's something special about this Hermes one. I know it's super expensive for a brow brush, but I do really like this one. And I did get it on sale when I purchased it. But yeah, I included in my favorites because it's just become something I reach for on a regular basis. Another one that's new to me is the BK Beauty and Angie Hot and Flashy Concealer Brush. This is A506. Really, you can tell I just use this. It's one that I've been using a ton. And then last up, I wanted to mention these Tancedo ones. These are Red Squirrel. And these are the ones with the bamboo handles. So this one here, this larger one, is the one that I have been using the most for setting powder because it's very light and airy. So those are all the ones I really wanted to highlight for this year. So many great brushes, but those were ones that were new to me this year. And one I just can't keep my hands off them. So I would love to know what your favorite products have been for this year. I will have a few more videos in this kind of like mini series with, we'll do fails, we'll do skincare, hair care, lip balms, you know, that type of thing. So let me know if you have any other requests. Please share your favorites down below in the comments and your thoughts on what I included here today. And hopefully I didn't miss anything. So thank you so much for tuning in. Happy holidays, and I'll see you very soon. Have a great day.